Okay, hey everyone, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Time another cool review for you guys from the brand Baltic. They're a French micro brand aiming to offer timeless pieces of the highest quality for fair prices. These are designed, assembled, and adjusted in France. In terms of type of watch, this is a dive watch, some key common characteristics and design language you're looking for a diver. Of course, you're going to find water resistance, typically paired to some type of screw down crown. Something that's tough, legible with a dive time bezel and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. This is their Aquascaphe Mark II in the blue colorway, and after 7 years of hindsight, they, as well as refined tastes and technical evolutions, they've really been shaping Baltic's future. They're introducing the Aquascaphe in its most refined form. Every component has been upgraded to deliver a more advanced, desirable, and technically improved version of their iconic watch, which also is still preserving the original's spirit. Also, another new feature is that these are also available in a smaller 37 millimeter diameter, but the one I have is a more traditional 39.5, and that's 39.5 from the bezel, as the case is still at right around 38 millimeters. These are going to go for €695 direct, or roughly about $813 USD, at least as configured on the Beads of Rice bracelet as seen. Right now, there's a lot of hype, of course, around these really neat new FKM rubber straps that have a very cool kind of almost like Epsom type of pattern to them, which I think looks really, really nice. Now, but this one is going to be on traditional Beads of Rice. It is the blue colorway, and some of you are thinking, this is that blue? It looks very dark. Under studio lights, it's going to look darker. I will say out in natural light, still dark, but definitely more clearly a blue tone. And yeah, this thing has been improved. You guys know I'm a big fan of Baltic. I own a few from my own personal collection, and I've reviewed even more in terms of things that have rotated in and out. This is a loaner that was sent in by the brand for me to share with you guys. Of course, they don't have any editorial input or anything like that, but honestly, after spending some time with this one, I have to say I probably do plan on trying to pick one up for the personal collection. So with that said, let's go and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, now what I like is, of course, it's still quite familiar, but definitely upgraded. Of course, you have things that stand out, like the crown guards there. But even within this, the design, in terms of it being a bit more consistent now with those beautiful 3D Lume applied indices. Now, in terms of the size, 38 millimeters in diameter at the case and about 39.5 at the bezel, 13 millimeters thick, and that's including the crystal, so still quite thin, and then 47 millimeters lug to lug, stainless steel, brushed with a few polished accents here and there. Now, the sapphire crystal is double domed, so it's going to be quite legible, quite nice. As you guys can see, there's going to be a bit of distortion and a bit of play, and you can also see that when we have the light directly on it, you're going to bring out a lot more of those blue tones versus, yeah, when it's reflecting off of a dark camera lens, it's going to appear much darker and more kind of in tune with a black dial. But I will say again, in more natural lighting situations, you're going to notice that blue pop. But the nice thing is this is a very deep dark blue, and I know some people struggle with that. Sometimes a blue watch can feel a bit unserious and cartoonish, but I'll say this deep dark blue palette here, man, it is serious. It looks really, really good, and I appreciate that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like vibrant blues as well, but there's something about that deep, glossy blue that just takes that hue and just plays with it, and it's very, very subtle. Now, the bezel action is definitely stiffer than the first generation. Some might feel that makes it maybe more dialed in, but there's definitely more tension, a little bit more resistance there. But it's still, again, quite nice. The grip is quite useful. Of course, you're noticing now some fingerprints from me touching this thing. But in terms of the tactile engagement, slow or fast. Very, very nice. Maybe slightly more resistance than I'd probably prefer. But at the end of the day, some of you will never even turn this bezel, so it being a bit stiff is going to probably be a non-issue. And probably that little bit of additional stiffness has to do with the additional levels of tolerance that they really, really tightened up here. So you're not seeing a lot of gappage because this is actually put together very, very well. Now, as you can see, the crown is screw down and the case back is also screw down. It has some light etching. You're probably also noticing quick release spring bars, drilled lugs, a lot of goodies, and even full screw pin construction. Very nice. And then getting to the star of the show here, this gorgeous dial. As you guys can see, glossy blue with applied 3D Lumicast indices. You're getting polished hands, as well as Swiss Superluminova BGW9 for that nice blue glow. It still has 200 meters or 20 atmospheres of water resistance, 20 millimeter lug width, where the lugs are drilled or pierced, depending on whatever you consider that. And then you have this very nice traditional beads of rice bracelet, nice female end link there, so the drape is very smooth in terms of its transition. And then it does taper from about 20 millimeters down to about 17.7. You do have screw pin construction, as you guys can see there, and then you do have that get down to this 19.6 millimeter push button folding clasp with that 6 positions of manual micro adjust, and you do of course have the milled folding section and more of a pressed clasp, but not in a way that is like very obvious. It honestly flows quite nicely. I do wish they would have sent this review unit over with a couple more extra links, or at least the extra strap that they have. Just again, more so for it to, for me to really try it out. This is, there's short a couple of links. So in terms of the way this is going to fit, it's going to be a little bit tight on my wrist. And it would have been nice to get that crossed hatch kind of design, FKM, in hand, because I think that looks really cool. But hey, thankfully I do plan now on picking one of these up for the collection, so you guys can stay tuned for a full review, where I'll even compare the first gen to this gen, as well as just get into some more of those deeper details. We do have a sign class push button, and that is about 19.6 millimeters wide. So, and it does also offer 6 positions of manual micro adjustment, and it does work quite well. So with that said, let's actually get this on the wrist, set up for some, just basically figure out how this thing wears. Okay, as you guys can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, I think this wears quite nicely. Also quite thin, beautifully compartmentalized in terms of the weights of that bezel versus the weight of the mid case, visual weight that is, and then of course of the case back. That is nice. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're gonna notice a fair amount of perspective distortion. Look, all of a sudden the watch seems much larger, but if I keep my wrist nice and low, look at that. All of a sudden you're seeing the sides of the bracelet a lot more. So all I'll do is keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And you guys can see it lays really nicely. Of course, it's more of a flat silhouette, but you're not getting a lot of gappage. And this is just a hair tight. I do wish maybe they would have included a couple extra links, because right now this is on the furthest micro adjustment length. But I'll say, hey, it's just for the video here, so it does look quite nice. And again, isn't overly tight, but of course you'll be able to dial in the fitment a lot better with a couple of extra links. Thankfully there's enough holes though to where I was able to get a nice fit, relatively nice anyway. So yeah, this thing looks gorgeous. What do you think, guys? Look at that profile. That just looks good, and you don't even need to even see the dial. This is impressive as is. And then of course you get to that dial and you're like, ooh, look at the details there. Very, very nice. So with that said, let's go ahead, get this off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Wow, that Lume is blasting. Of course, a slight contrast because of how bright the indices are versus that sapphire bezel insert, where you can really only fit so much Lume. But I will say, to my eye anyway, it flows well enough. But one thing I'm always going to like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because you're always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And check that blue out. Of course, the camera is trying to white balance everything back out, but I will say again, this deep, sedate blue, I like it a lot. Oof. And of course, when it's gone, you have beautiful bright blue BGW9 Lume. So very, very handsome. Again, big fan. Look at the blues there. Nice and deep. So that means it's going to be just that much more versatile. So with that said, we'll actually get the lights back on here. Look at that dial. I'm loving the tonality here. Nice and dark. Beautifully glossy. It just all kind of comes together and flows. Closing thoughts, guys. Classic proportions really fit most any situation. You also have this timeless design aesthetic that is super versatile and is equally as wearable in terms of dimensions and proportions. Now, when it comes to model variants, check the site links for current options and availability. Of course, this is, at the time of recording, quite new in terms of their release, so I'm sure there'll be other variations to come in the future, and more iterative updates in terms of strap choices, bracelets, and in terms of the quality of these different options. Now, in terms of comparable models, guys, there are a lot of vintage inspired divers out there, ranging from super affordable all the way up to genuine luxury. But Baltic, I think have always just done a good job of finding a bit of a sweet spot, offering independently desirable models. Yes, independently desirable. When I say that, I mean that you want these because you want them. You want the Baltic. This is not about getting a cheaper version of something else. It's about getting this version of something that you want. And that is something that really separates your very entry level, micro brand / factory brand, dive watch. And this definitely has more of a mainstream desirability that I think really makes the wearing, situation a lot more enjoyable, as well as any types of collecting and, tying memories to really just an overall very compelling package. So with that, with that kind of wide range, it's nice that I feel like, while these aren't necessarily class leading specs wise, Baltic have always kind of done a great job offering strong enough specs to appeal to a broad demographic of collectors. So for me, guys, bottom line, although Baltic have already locked in a secure place within the enthusiast market, they continue to iterate and improve model lines, refining their brand to really grow alongside with their customers' evolving needs. But let me know what you guys all think down in the comments below. Is this compelling enough for you to upgrade, or is it exciting enough for you to even double down? And like me, I already have a first gen in all black that I adore with its grainy dial texture, but this one is special, absolutely. So let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.